The night was quiet, too quiet. Cold wind moved through the empty streets at the far edge of the colony. The air smelled of rust, oil, and old metal. This was the place where the colony sent broken machines, damaged ships, and everything they no longer needed. Locals called it the graveyard of steel, but to Captain Elias, it was simply the junkyard. He had been here many times before. His small freighter often needed parts, and the junkyard was the cheapest place to find them. Tonight, he came looking for a rare engine coil, but as soon as he stepped inside the gates, he felt uneasy. The piles of scrap stood tall, like silent towers, some as high as a building. Shadows shifted between them. The moonlight caught the sharp edges of broken metal, and somewhere far away, a single metal sheet clanged against another. Elias walked slowly, boots crunching on bits of glass and wires. His flashlight beams swept across dead ships, rusted hulls, and crates full of dismantled weapons. Nothing unusual, but then the smell hit him. It wasn't the normal junkyard smell of burnt wires and oil. This was different. It smelled alive, faintly sweet, but mixed with the sharp scent of blood. He stopped, listening. The wind whispered through the scrap heaps. Then he heard it, a weak, almost inaudible sound. Not the creak of metal, not the buzz of a power cell. It was a breath. Elias tightened his grip on the flashlight and followed the sound. He moved between two towering piles of machine parts, stepping over a broken droid arm. The breathing grew louder, shallow, weak, and then he saw her dot. At first he thought it was just a heap of strange scrap, but when his light fell on her, his chest tightened. She was curled up against a rusted crate, her thin body trembling. Silver scales shimmered faintly under the dust and dirt. Two small, delicate wings folded, tight against her back. Her face was sharp yet childlike, with high cheekbones and a narrow jaw. She was not human. Her eyes opened slowly when the light touched her. They glowed a soft fading blue, as if holding the last embers of some inner fire. She looked at him, not with fear, but with exhaustion, as if she had already given up. Her ribs were visible, the skin between her scales drawn tight. Her lips were pale, cracked. She tried to speak, but only a dry hiss escaped. Her tail, long and thin, twitched weakly in the dirt. Elias crouched down. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked quietly. The girl's gaze stayed locked on his. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small water flask. He opened it and held it out. Her eyes flicked to it, but she didn't move. Slowly, he brought it closer to her lips. She hesitated, then sipped, just a drop at first, then more, as if she feared it would be taken away. When she pulled back, she closed her eyes for a moment, like even drinking had taken all her strength. Elias looked around. This wasn't right. Why was she here? Who had left her? The colony had strict rules about alien life forms. If they were found without registration or approval, they were captured, sometimes sent away, sometimes never seen again. And a dragon. Hybrid, that was beyond rare. His thoughts were interrupted by a sharp noise, clang. Somewhere deeper in the junkyard, metal fell against metal. Elias turned his head, scanning with the flashlight, but saw nothing. He didn't like it. Someone else was here. The girl's eyes opened again, this time wide with sudden fear. Her gaze darted toward the sound. Her breathing quickened. She was scared, not of him, but of whatever was out there. Elias leaned closer. "Who's out?" "There," he whispered. She tried to speak again, but only managed a broken word that sounded like hunters. That was enough to send a chill down his spine. A soft, mechanical hum started in the distance. Elias knew that sound, a surveillance drone. It was getting closer. He made a quick decision. He pulled off his jacket and wrapped it gently around her small frame. She was cold to the touch, her scales almost icy. When he lifted her, she was so light it felt wrong, like carrying a child who had been starved for weeks. The hum grew louder. A red scanning beam passed between two piles of scrap just a few meters away. Elias moved quickly, keeping low, his boots barely making a sound on the dirt. The girl's head rested weakly against his shoulder, her eyes still open but unfocused. Another metallic crash echoed, closer this time. The red beam swept across the path ahead, forcing Elias to duck behind an old cargo container. He held his breath as the drone floated past. Its sensors blinked, scanning, searching. He waited until it was gone, then stepped out and headed toward the junkyard's exit. But just before he reached the fence, he heard it, a distorted voice through static. Target located. Retrieve alive. Elias's jaw tightened. Whoever they were, they weren't giving up, and they wanted her alive. The girl stirred slightly in his arms, her claws weakly gripping his sleeve. She looked up at him again, eyes pleading without. Words he knew right then, if he walked away, she would be taken. And judging from her condition, she wouldn't survive long. For a brief moment, his mind screamed at him to leave her. The law, the danger, the risk. But something deep inside told him otherwise. Elias took one last look at the dark junkyard behind him, then stepped into the night, holding her close. Far above, a shadow moved across the moon, and he knew the real danger had only just begun. Elias moved fast, but not fast enough. The voice from the junkyard still echoed in his mind. Target located. Retrieve alive. That meant they were close, maybe already following him. The girl's body was light in his arms, but every step felt heavier with the thought of what he had just done. He had broken the colony's law. Helping an unregistered alien was a crime. Hiding her was worse. And this wasn't just any alien. She was something rare, something valuable. That also meant she was dangerous to own, dangerous to even be seen with. But when Elias looked down at her, he couldn't see danger. He saw a living being clinging to her last breaths. Her small claws still gripped his jacket like she was afraid. He would disappear if she let go. Her breathing was shallow, each inhale sounding weaker than the last. The night air was cold as he slipped into one of the colony's side streets. Old neon lights flickered in the distance. Somewhere nearby, the heavy rumble of patrol bikes rolled through the streets. The hunters were coming. He ducked into a narrow alley, pressing himself against the wall. His heart pounded as a drone buzzed overhead, scanning the street. He held the girl tighter, her head resting against his shoulder. She didn't speak, but he could feel her trembling. In that moment, Elias's mind argued with itself. Leave her, put her down, walk away. That was the smart choice. He didn't know her. He didn't know who was after her. If he took her in, he could lose his ship, his freedom, maybe even his life. But the thought of leaving her in that junkyard, to be found by whoever wanted her retrieved, felt wrong. Too wrong. He had seen that look in her eyes before. Not in aliens, but in people. Refugees from the outer rim, starving miners after a collapse, children in war. It was the look of someone who had already seen the worst and didn't expect kindness anymore, and that made him furious. He adjusted his grip and started moving again, faster this time. He knew where he had to go, his ship, the Vagrant Star. If he could get her on board, he could at least hide her, treat her injuries. Maybe find out who she was. The streets got quieter the closer he got to the docking bay. But the silence wasn't comfort, it was warning. Hunters didn't make noise when they were close. Halfway there, a shadow moved in the corner of his eye. Elias stopped, shifting his weight. From the darkness, a tall figure stepped out. Black armor, helmet visor glowing red. A hunter, the man. Spoke through a voice filter, hand over the specimen. Elias tightened his grip on the girl. She's not a specimen. She is property, the hunter said coldly. Unregistered and illegally present in this colony. Step aside, and you will not be harmed. Property. Elias hated that word. He shook his head. Not happening. The hunter tilted his head. Then you die with her. The man reached for a weapon, but Elias didn't wait. He turned sharply into a side passage, running full speed. The girl let out a faint cry as he bounced her against his chest. But he didn't stop. Footsteps thundered behind him. He raced through the docking corridors, weaving between stacks of cargo crates. His breath came in short bursts. The girl's body was limp now, her eyes half closed again. He didn't know how much time she had left. Finally, his ship came into view. The Vagrant Star wasn't much to look at. Patched hull, mismatched thrusters, but it was his. And right now, it was her only chance. He ran up the ramp, slapped the door control, and felt the ship seal behind him just as the hunter rounded the corner. A muffled thud hit the door, followed by silence. Inside the dim cargo bay, Elias lowered the girl onto a crate. She was still breathing, but barely. He tapped his comm panel. AI prep medbay. We have an emergency. Confirmed. The ship's calm voice replied. Patient species. Elias looked at her again. Her scales caught the light, shimmering faintly. Her wings twitched once. Unknown, he said, but she's important. The AI didn't ask questions. It never did. As the medbay door slid open, Elias carried her inside. The scanner came to life, sweeping a beam over her small frame. Numbers and alien symbols flashed across the monitor. Elias didn't understand most of it, but one word made his heart skip a beat. Last of species. Elias stared at the screen. He didn't know if that was true, but if it was, then saving her wasn't just a choice anymore. It was a responsibility. Somewhere outside, he knew the hunters were regrouping. They would be back. They would come harder, and they would never stop. But Elias had made his decision, no matter the cost. He was going to keep her alive. The engines of the Vagrant Star were still cold when Elias heard the first impact. A heavy thud against the hull, then another. The girl was lying in the medbed, connected to a weak life support tube. Her breathing had steadied a little, but she was far from safe. Elias adjusted the straps holding her in place. Stay with me, he muttered. Just a little longer. The ship's AI broke the silence. Captain, incoming hostiles. 4 ground units. 2 aerial drones. They are armed. Elias cursed under his breath. How long until we can lift off? Main thrusters will need 4 minutes to reach safe burn temperature. 4 minutes. In a place where seconds mattered. The hull shuddered again, this time, followed by the hiss of a cutting torch. They were trying to breach the cargo bay door. Elias grabbed his pulse pistol from the wall rack and checked the charge. 1 full cell. Not enough for a fight, but maybe enough to make them think twice. The medbay lights dimmed for a moment, a sign the hunters were trying to cut power. The girl's eyes flickered open, glowing faintly again. Her gaze locked on him, and for a moment it felt like she was trying to warn him about something. Then the ship's alarm screamed. Breach. Elias ran into the corridor just as the inner cargo door exploded inward. Smoke and sparks filled the air. 4 hunters stepped through the hole, armor black as the void, visors burning red. He fired before they could spread out, hitting one in the shoulder. The hunter staggered back, armor sparking. The others advanced. Without hesitation, Elias ducked behind a crate, firing again to keep them pinned. A drone zipped through the breach above, scanning, its sensors locking onto the medbay. Not happening, Elias growled. He shot the drone out of the air, its shell cracking as it crashed to the floor. That was enough to make the hunters rush. Forward, Elias pulled back, forcing them to chase him deeper into the ship. He sprinted through the narrow corridors, leading them away from the girl. The sound of armored boots echoed behind him, steady and unhurried, like predators who knew their prey was trapped. He turned a corner and ducked into the maintenance shaft, sliding down the ladder to the engineering deck. If he could reach the secondary hatch, he could get outside without them knowing. The AI's voice came through his earpiece. Captain, thrusters ready in 90 seconds. However, enemy reinforcements detected. To pursuit craft approaching from the east. Elias clenched his jaw. 90 seconds might as well be a lifetime with the kind of hunters he was dealing with. He reached the hatch, opened it quietly, and stepped into the cold night air. The docking bay stretched before him, wide, empty, and lit by pale floodlights. In the distance, the barren wastes began, stretching out into rolling hills of sand and rock under the moonlight. And then he saw them, 2 sleek black pursuit bikes speeding toward the dock. He didn't think. He ran. He sprinted across the bay and into the open desert. Sand crunched under his boots. Wind cut against his face. Behind him, engines roared louder as the bikes closed in. The first blast hit the ground beside him, throwing sand into his eyes. The second grazed his side, burning through his jacket. He dove behind a jagged rock outcrop, gasping for breath. The girl's face flashed in his mind, weak, starving, strapped to a medbed, alone, on a ship that was about to be boarded again if he didn't get back fast. He peeked around the rock. The bikes were circling, searching. He fired his pistol, hitting the lead bike's front stabilizer. It spun out, crashing in a spray of sand. The second bike swerved, its rider drawing a long, sharp blade. No more running. Elias stepped out from cover, aiming carefully. The rider accelerated straight toward him, but before the blade could strike, Elias fired. The bike exploded into a ball of fire, lighting up the desert. The AI's voice returned. Captain, thrusters at full power. Suggest immediate return. He ran back toward the ship, lungs burning. The hunters from inside were spilling out onto the dock now, firing at him, their shots slicing through the air. Elias didn't bother to return fire. He just ran. He hit the ramp controls, sprinted inside, and the ship's hatch slammed shut behind him. Lift off, he shouted. The vagrant star roared as the thrusters ignited. The hunters shrank away. In the viewport, as the ship blasted upward, climbing fast into the black sky. In the medbay, the girl's eyes opened again as the weight of gravity pulled them upward. She looked at him with a faint smile, the first he'd seen. But Elias didn't feel relief. He knew this was only the first chase. And next time, they would come with everything they had. Asterisk, the vagrant star cut through the upper atmosphere, leaving the colony behind like a fading scar on the surface. Stars spread out in every direction, silent, cold, and endless. Elias stayed in the medbay, leaning against the wall as the ship's AI scanned the girl again. She was sleeping now, but it was not the peaceful kind. Her body twitched sometimes, her claws curling as if she was fighting something in a dream. "Report," Elias said. The AI's voice came softly, almost as if it understood the weight of what it was about to say. Subject identified. Species, Drakari, hybrid subspecies, part human, part dragonborn. Estimated age, 16 standard cycles. Genetic markers indicate royal heritage. Elias frowned. Royal heritage, confirmed. She carries a genetic crest, a symbol found only in the ruling bloodlines of the Drakari Empire. Cross-reference with historical records shows she may be the last living heir. Elias blinked. Last. What happened to the others? The AI hesitated. The Drakari homeworld was destroyed 17 cycles ago. Official records claim a natural disaster, but classified military archives tell a different story. The Empire was hunted, systematically destroyed by a coalition of outer colonies. They feared the Drakari's power. Elias looked at the girl again. Her breathing had grown shallow. What kind of power? Drakari blood contains a crystalline structure known as a stellar core fragment. It is not biological, it is alive. Records describe it as a piece of a dying star, bonded to their life force at birth. It allows them to manipulate energy, to turn light into fire, gravity into wind. They were warriors, kings, and destroyers. Elias leaned closer, his voice low. "And she has this fragment." The AI scanners glowed brighter. "Yes, Captain, and it is unstable. If she dies, the fragment will be released. The resulting energy could destroy an entire city." Elias's stomach turned. This girl wasn't just rare, she was a living weapon. That's why the hunters wanted her alive. Not to save her, to use her, or to end her before her power could awaken. The ship's comms crackled suddenly, interrupting his thoughts. A deep voice came through, distorted but commanding. "Captain Elias, you have something that belongs to us. Return the Drakari child, now, and we will let you live." Elias glanced at the girl. Even unconscious, her fingers gripped the edge of the bed, like she could hear the threat. He pressed the comm switch. "She doesn't belong to you, and she's not a child. She's a person." The voice chuckled darkly. "You think you are her savior. You don't understand what she is. If she wakes, she will burn everything you care about." Elias didn't reply. He cut the comm channel. He looked down at her again. She stirred, her eyes opening just slightly. They glowed brighter now, a deep silver with flecks of gold. Her lips moved, and this time he could almost hear the words, "They killed my family." The words were barely a whisper, but they hit him harder than any gunshot. Her gaze held his, and in that moment he saw something else behind the fear. Rage, a deep, burning rage that had been kept alive even while her body was dying. She coughed, weakly but with determination. "Don't let them take me." Elias nodded once. "They won't." But as the AI flashed an urgent alert, multiple ships incoming, he knew the hardest part was yet to come, because now they weren't just hunting her, they were hunting him too. The warning lights in the vagrant star's cockpit pulsed like a heartbeat, red against black. The AI's voice cut through the tension. Multiple enemy signatures detected. 6 ships, all armed. Intercept in 90 seconds. Elias sat in the pilot's chair, hands gripping the controls. The girl, the Drakari princess, last of her kind, was strapped into the co-pilot's seat. She was awake now, but still weak. Her wings folded tight against her back. Outside the viewport, space was quiet, endless. But the radar screen told the truth. A storm was coming. They won't stop, Elias said quietly. The girl didn't answer right away. Her gaze was fixed on the stars, eyes reflecting silver and gold. No, she said at last. They never stop. The AI spoke again. Captain, they have locked weapons on us. Evasive maneuvers, advised. Elias smiled grimly. They want to fight. Let's give them one. The first hunter ship appeared from the black, sleek and fast, its hull bristling with weapons. The others followed, forming a net around the vagrant star. A channel opened automatically. The same deep voice from before filled the cabin. This is your last warning, Captain. Power down your engines. Surrender the Drakari, and you live. Elias looked at the girl. She was staring at the ships, her claws digging into the armrest. If you give me to them, she said softly, they will kill you anyway. He nodded. I figured. He switched the to broadcast. You want her, you'll have to take her from me. The enemy ships moved in, their weapons charging. The AI calculated the odds in silence, but Elias didn't need to hear the numbers. This wasn't about odds. The first missile streaked toward them, white fire against the black. Elias yanked the controls hard, the ship rolling just enough for the missile to sail past. The second hunter opened fire with pulse cannons, blue streaks. Slicing through the dark dot, Elias pushed the vagrant star to its limits, weaving through the incoming fire. The ship groaned, metal straining, but held. The girl gripped the console, her eyes glowing brighter. I can help, she said suddenly. Elias risked a glance at her. You can barely stand. I don't need to stand, she replied. I just need to see them. Before he could stop her, she closed her eyes. The air in the cabin grew warmer. A faint hum filled the space, not mechanical, but alive. Her wings twitched, scales catching the dim light. Outside, the nearest hunter ship suddenly veered off course, as if hit by an invisible force. Its hull glowed red-hot, then cracked apart in a silent explosion. Elias stared. Was that yes, she said, her voice shaking. But I can't hold it long. The remaining hunter ships regrouped fast, spreading out to flank them. One of them launched a tether, a grappling weapon designed to hook and drag smaller ships. The AI's alarm screamed as the tether locked onto their hull. Elias slammed a switch, diverting all power to the rear thrusters. The ship shuddered violently, the tether cable snapping free before it could pull them in. But the hunters were still coming. The girl opened her eyes again, weaker now. Elias, he didn't look at her. Save your strength. She shook her head. If they catch us, they'll take the fragment from me, and I'll die. I'd rather burn with it than let them have it. He met her gaze then. There was no fear in her eyes, only resolve. Elias turned back to the controls, jaw tight. Not on my watch. The enemy ships moved in for the kill. The AI counted down the distance. 30 seconds, 20, 10. Elias gripped the firing controls. Hold on. The stars outside flared with enemy fire. The vagrant star dove straight into the center of the formation, weaving through the chaos. One wrong move, and they'd be vapor. The girl's eyes began to glow again, brighter than before. Her voice was almost a whisper. Fight. Elias hit the weapon's trigger, unleashing everything the ship had. Missiles streaked out, pulse cannons roared, and the black was filled with fire. The first hunter ship exploded, then the second, but more were still coming, and then a massive shadow fell over them, blocking the stars. Something far bigger than a hunter ship had just arrived. To be continued.